When you're brand new to real estate investing, I usually find that new investors, they're going to talk about things like return on investment, that's ROI, or cash flow. These are important metrics. These are metrics that I look at when thinking about investing in real estate. As you continue to grow as a real estate investor, you'll learn more things, you'll gain more perspectives, you'll meet a lot of other investors. At some point in time, you're likely going to discover cash-on-cash return. They're going to be talking about how they're getting infinite cash-on-cash returns. All these things are more focused on the investment than on you. For me, my most scarce resource is my time. And you're going to come to learn that you are the most valuable asset you have. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the most important metric that almost no real estate investor is talking about. It actually blows my mind. I don't even think I've seen any other YouTube or guru break down for you guys what the most important metric you should be looking at when thinking about investing. Now, I'm going to be talking about it through the aspect of real estate investing, but in fact, I believe this applies to any sort of investment strategy or technique that you really need to take into consideration. Before we even break that down though, let's discuss some of the common metrics I hear people talk about and why those metrics are important, but why they're not the most important metric that you should be paying attention to when it comes to real estate investing. When you're brand new to real estate investing, I usually find that new investors, they're going to talk about things like return on investment, that's ROI, or cash flow. So in general, you go to a new networking event with all new real estate investors, people are going to be talking about their cash flow per door or what their return on investment is. Those are going to be the buzzwords that you hear all the time in those little communities. And while that's a good starting point, and really any basic investing 101 textbook is going to talk about ROI, and any basic real estate investing textbook, especially for buy and hold investors, is going to mention the word cash flow. These are important metrics. These are metrics that I look at when thinking about investing in real estate. But when I'm really thinking about what I'm trying to accomplish as a real estate investor, these aren't the most important metric I'm looking at. As you continue to grow as a real estate investor, you'll learn more things, you'll gain more perspectives, you'll meet a lot of other investors. At some point in time, you're likely going to discover cash-on-cash return. Now, normally this is a slightly more sophisticated investor. This is someone that's starting to really get focused on using OPM. OPM stands for other people's money. We've done a series of videos on OPM with my buddy Ben, Humble CEO. That's my business partner on Cashflow Tribe. Really encourage you guys to check out those videos. But when we're looking at cash on cash, what the investor's really looking at is how much cash do I have to put into this business? How much cash do I have to put into this rental property? And how much cash flow or cash out does it generate for me? So again, return on investment is just looking at the total cost of the property versus the overall returns from that investment. Cash flow is really focused often on cash flow per door or cash flow per property. Cash on cash returns are much more focused upon exactly how much cash do I have to put into the deal and how much cash do I get out on a monthly or yearly basis. Now, when we're thinking cash on cash, a lot of buy and hold investors, when they're getting more sophisticated, this is when they discover BRRRR investing. The reason we're so excited about BRRRRs and the reason I talk about BRRRR investing, and quick reminder, BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And I've done dozens of videos at this point on the BRRRR investment strategy. So I really encourage you guys to dive deep into those videos. But the reason the BRRRR investment strategy is so important to COC or cash on cash return investors is when we're doing the BRRRR, we still put a lot of money initially into the deal, but because we can quickly refinance it, we get to pull out a lot of the cash that we tied up. And in fact, if you do what I call a perfect BRRRR, that means you're going to get all your money out. Well, if you got all your money out, but your property still cash flows, that essentially means that your cash on cash return is infinite. And so you'll hear a lot of slightly more sophisticated investors. So the investors that are more sophisticated than the ROI or cash flow per door investors, they're going to be talking about how they're getting infinite cash-on-cash returns. And again, that sounds very impressive, and I think it's an important metric. Again, I pay a lot of attention to my cash-on-cash returns, but by no means is that the most important metric to me. So cash-on-cash returns occurs once you start really being able to refinance properties effectively through the BRRRR, or when you start taking on JV or hard money lenders and you're able to use OPM in order to build your real estate empire. As you continue to grow as a real estate investor, once you start maybe getting up to the likes of Casey Wong or institutional-oriented investors, then you start to hear about IRR, internal rate of return. Other people might refer to this as an NPV calculation, so a net present value calculation. What this is really focused on is trying to understand the full spectrum. And again, sometimes a more simple version of IRR might be a cap rate. So I actually kind of forgot to put cap rate here. We'll throw that down quick. So I think cap rate is kind of one of those middle of the roads. So a cap rate is often, when people start talking about cap rates, they think that they're starting to become serious investors. And what a cap rate is focused on is it's ignoring your cost of borrowing, because each of us as borrowers will have different ability and capacity to borrow, and we'll probably have different costs of funds. Now, IRR is actually taking into consideration the whole picture. It's also looking at long-term, what's the expected appreciation on the property? Because often the ROI, cash flow, or the cash-on-cash investor, or even the cap rate investor, they're not necessarily factoring in expected appreciation, whether forced or just through natural market inflation. So again, a lot of more sophisticated investors that are starting to flirt with being institutional investors, they're going to drop words like IRR, net present value, and cap rate. Again, really important. And in fact, when we're doing some of our calculations on buying the apartment buildings I buy these days, I do use an IRR NPV calculator. In part, that's because what one of our lenders is familiar with using, so I want to be able to really talk to them in their language. But again, cap rates, IRR, still not the most important metric, in my opinion, when it comes to being an investor. And this is true whether you're a real estate investor, a paper, or a stock investor, doesn't matter. ROT. How many of you have even heard of ROT? I'm going to guess it's less than 1% of my audience right now has ever heard of ROT. ROT, return on time. Now let's take a step back. ROI is your return on investment. COC is essentially your cash return on cash invested. IRR is the net present value of the investment you're making. All these things are more focused on the investment than on you. For me, my most scarce resource is my time. And if for you right now, your time isn't your most scarce resource, trust me, at some point in time, if you're doing it right, it will become your most scarce resource. Time, it's the only thing we can't really replace. There's always more money. There's always more deals. There's always more investments. But return on time, that's when I know I'm talking to someone on the next level. That's when I know I'm talking to someone that I want to have an additional conversation with. When I hear people talk about return on time, it's often coming from the lips of guys like Ben Humble CEO, Chris Root, Evan Stewart, or a lot of the other high performers that you see on my YouTube channel and constantly in the Cashflow Tribe ecosystem. Because return on time is even more than just about your investment. It's about getting the most return out of you. And if you don't see yourself as your number one investment, if you don't see your brain, your mindset, your body, you as a full package, as the most important resource available to you at your disposal, again, I think you're either looking at it wrong or just give it a little bit of time and perspective, and you're going to come to learn that you are the most valuable asset you have. Your mindset is one of the most important things that you can invest in as a real estate investor. So I want to challenge everyone to start looking at their return on time. Because sometimes we can dump hundreds of hours into a deal that's only going to cash flow $100 a month per unit. That's not a bad return on investment potentially. It's maybe not even a bad cash-on-cash return if you're able to do a perfect BRRRR. But if it took you 2 years to pull off that project, when you could have pulled off 4 slightly smaller projects that maybe only earned 75% each of the return of the other, well, in that case, our return on time is still much lower. But even more so, it's the reason that I do YouTube, guys. The return on time here is massive. I can have a one-to-many conversation. I'm going to shoot this video, I'm going to have my team put it together, and we're going to release it, and within the first 24 hours, we'll at least get 1,000 views. Maybe if it pops off and goes viral, right now we got one video popping off, it's got 10,000 views in the last 3 or 4 days. And again, think about that. That means I was able to that video was like 30 minutes. I think the average view is like 5 minutes long, which doesn't sound like a lot. But what if you had 10,000 people listen to you for 5 minutes each? That's a huge impact. That's literally 50,000 minutes. How long would it take you through one-on-one conversations to talk for 50,000 minutes? A lot. It would take you a lot of time. And that's why return on time is so critical. It's the only thing you can't get back. It's the only thing that can't be replicated or replaced. And if you currently don't believe you're your most important asset, I think you need to spend some time and just look deep within yourself. You need to really think about self-improvement and take some time to reflect. Because I want you to become the most valuable asset you have. All right, guys, that's it. That's the most important metric in regards to investing. Return on time, ROT. I want you to start viewing everything through the lens of return on time now. Not just your real estate investing, but the relationships you have. What is the return on that time? And this is important to understand as well, because sometimes we inject a lot of time into an activity without a lot of energy. So when you're sitting at home with your significant other or your kids or your family, and you're spending quality time in front of the TV while also on your cell phone and just like mumbling or to that person, doing 3 hours of that is a terrible return on time in my opinion, because you're not building a deep connection. You're not building a real relationship. You're not moving the needle. You're much better off to spend 15 minutes in a deep conversation with your spouse or your child or a family or friend and really actually ask them, hey, what's going on in your life? Versus just a bunch of, surface level communication. That surface level communication is a terrible ROT. Small talk, terrible return on time. Deep conversations, meaningful conversations, being careful about who you let influence you and who you let into your ecosystem. Those are amazing return on time activities. I want you guys to get the most out of your time. Jump in the comment section and let me know. Have you ever paid attention to return on time? How are you viewing return on time right now that you've watched this video? What do you believe is one of your best or highest ROT activities? Jump in that comment section and let me know. I want to hear, because I'm constantly looking for ways to make my time more efficient. I think social media is one of the best tools available to me because of these one-to-many conversations. But social media can also be a terrible waste and a terrible time sink in regards to ROT if you're only ever passively consuming it. And especially if you're only consuming, here's the thing, guys. I've produced 650 plus YouTube videos now teaching you everything you need to know about real estate investing on my YouTube channel. If you watch all those 650 videos, but never make a single offer to buy a piece of real estate, those 650 plus videos you just watched, terrible ROT. If you watch one of my videos and take action and start moving the needle in your financial life, amazing ROT. Way too often we're getting caught up in analysis paralysis. We're holding ourselves back. I see so many real estate investors focusing on red herrings and just coming up for excuses why they can't take action, rather than understanding every minute you waste is ruining your return on time. I want to see you guys make the most of your time. Let's go do it.